The votes are in, and while many remain to be counted, some results in Hunter seats are clearer than others. The ALP's Robert Coombs secured 46% of the primary vote in the seat of Swansea. Today he vowed to tackle issues like the Swansea Bridge.
Police and security is an issue that unites the electorate. Second biggest issues is issues of development and environment.
Labor's Sonia Hornery took Wallsend with 51% of the vote. The Newcastle City Councillor could now give up her local government post.
I'll need to talk to the party, the ALP, about the future of that.
Kerry Hickey has been returned in Cessnock, and Matthew Morris has a strong lead in Charlestown with 43% of the vote. But 4 other seats remain in play because of a swing against Labor. At this stage, Labor's Jodie McKay and Independent John Tate look like the main contenders for Newcastle, but Bryce Gaudry isn't conceding defeat just yet.
Well, that could happen, and if I am re-elected, I'm there to serve.
In Maitland, Frank Terenzini leads the city's mayor, Peter Blackmore. Lake Macquarie MP Jeff Hunter is ahead of Lake Macquarie Mayor Greg Piper, and just 1% separates Liberal Craig Bowman from Labor's Jim Arneman. It could be midweek before outstanding votes are counted and preferences are distributed. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Lakes United remembered 2 former Belmont boys before kick-off. But the Bay hadn't forgot the off-season move of a former favourite son in Andrew Spicer, last year's Blues captain, a seagull these days. The visitors had everything fall their way in the opening few minutes. Lakes hadn't even touched the ball and the visitors were over through Alan Mullins. Adam McEwen made Ben Cross look more like a moving target, while Paul Skovgaard didn't miss Newcastle teammate Warwick Colley. From the very next play though, Nelson Bay landed another one where it hurts, with Mullins second, also doubling their lead. But if Lakes winger Jason Thorne can continue to finish off like this, both he and his team will be in for a big year. In the Country Rugby Union Championship, Newcastle has missed reaching the Caldwell Cup final in tough circumstances. Needing to beat Central West and earn a bonus point in the process, they did so thanks to a last-gasp try to Andrew Delore. However, they also needed Central North to lose overnight against the Central Coast. They did 37-30. However, by scoring 4 tries and coming within 7 points, they earned 2 bonus points. That was enough to see them leapfrog Newcastle into the final.
It is a dream come true, and all my family and all that can be rest easy now. I won't be such a cranky bugger, and I've done what I've always dreamed of doing, so I'm absolutely wrapped.
Greg Piper only campaigned for 6 weeks, but the independent mayor has pushed the safe Labor seat of Lake Macquarie to preferences. Should he upset sitting member Jeff Hunter, Greg Piper is ready to put the seat and the region's most popular city on the state political map.
Well, it's certainly my intention to make sure that happens. I'm staying on as mayor of the city of Lake Macquarie for the next 18 months at least, and I believe that there's a commonality between the two jobs.
There's an average of 47,000 voters enrolled in each of the Hunter seats yet to be decided, and it's the people of Port Stephens who gave opposition leader Peter Debnam a reason to smile and return to the seat today.
We're very hopeful of winning the seat of Port Stephens. It's too close to call at the moment, but Craig's run a great campaign.
Craig Bowman adamant about the reason why Labor's Jim Arneman is battling to retain the seat for the ALP.
I ran this campaign on Port Stephens issues. My opponent ran it on work choices, and which is, as you know, a federal issue.
The Premier may have claimed Newcastle today for Jodie McKay, but after voting closed, she was expecting a wait for the result.
I remain cautiously optimistic, but it's certainly too close to call, and I'm not going to call it.
John Tate still believes Newcastle could again be an independent seat.
We've really taken this seat right to the brink. One of the things I set out to do was to make this seat a marginal seat, a swinging seat.
And in Maitland, neither Mayor Peter Blackmore nor Labor's Frank Terenzini were speculating today, leaving the counting by electoral officials to tell the eventual story. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Kelly Hoare is understandably upset over reports opposition leader Kevin Rudd has made a secret pre-selection deal to back ACTU Secretary Greg Combet for her safe seat of Charlton in the next federal election.
I'm not going to give up without a fight, no way. And if they want to play this dirty, I don't like playing dirty, but if that's going to be their rules, then they can expect a fight from me.
It's not the first time the federal ALP backbencher has been at odds with her party. Last year she was on a so-called dead wood list, which was allegedly compiled by her fellow members and identified 8 pollies they thought should be dumped.
I have my suspicions of people who have been out to get me, and I don't think that it's either the left or the right faction, but I believe that it would be the left and the right combining.
Ms Hoare believes the party wants her out because she's not aligned with a faction.
They see me as easy pickings because they want people in the Federal Parliamentary Labor Party who will do their bidding for them, and I don't.
Kevin Rudd's office hasn't commented on the issue. Madeline Bond, NBN News. The Bra Boys have been implicated in a murder, are known for their aggressive defence of each other and Maroubra Beach, and are well known for their surfing prowess. Their first film, directed by Bra Boy leader Sonny Aberton, explores their life, surf culture and surf tribalism, issues he believes a Newcastle audience can relate to.
With the beach right on the city, they face a lot of the same social issues as what we face in Sydney. And yeah, you know, it's almost the documentary really shows too how the importance of local surf culture.
Today, the film became the most successful Australian documentary in history.
And when we made the film, we first were expecting to show it at local surf clubs and scout halls and stuff. So we just found out today it's been the highest grossing Australian documentary ever.
It's grossed $900,000 since it opened on March 15.
People say that we're a gang, but we're just mates who have each other's backs.
Tonight, Sonny will be at the Greater Union Cinemas in Glendale for the film's 6:50 screening.
We've got a Q&A questioning thing happening after it. So if anyone wants to come down and grill me, they can.
Daniel Toller carries the pain of a hip flexor injury this week, but at least he knows he's free to play next Monday night, despite his high tackle charge on Jason Riles. Corey Payne's effort only a minute earlier on James McManus also caught the eye of the match review committee, and the Dragon will be out for a week. The Knights still enjoy the luxury of a week to recover for Monday night's fixture, and some will need every day.
Yeah, I know. It feels like I've played 26 games already.
Not happy with his game at the weekend, Mullen could find himself in the number 7 jumper for another week yet, with Andrew John still only a 50-50 chance of recovering fully from concussion.
Yeah, he's still, sleeping a lot during the day, and he's got a few headaches and stuff, but he's still going to be past me.
Corey Patterson can't wait for the weekend after the 19-year-old impressed in his top-grade debut. His enthusiasm hard to bottle.
Yeah, I think a couple more games under my belt and get a bit more experience, and that's just my first game. Might have been a fluke, but hopefully not.
George Carmont won't mind. Patterson sent him over for the winner against the Dragons, but no one's getting carried away.
We're sort of just, building and just working towards, improving each week, which is what we're doing.
Starting from 5th on the grid, Stoner knew he had a real battle ahead of him before a wheel was even turned. When they did get going, it got harder much faster. The young Australian pushed back as far as 9th at one stage before he got his Ducati moving the right way. After finally leaving Carlos Checa and Marco Melandri behind, he had last year's champion in his sights, and when he went for Nicky Hayden, the American just couldn't foot it with Stoner. Back into 5th, he was on target to go even higher before the laps ran out. Valentino Rossi the winner and back on top of the overall Riders' Championship. Closer to home, and the Hunter's Jamie Stouffer continues his winning ways on the Australian Superbike circuit. His brother and Yamaha teammate Dan provided most competition for the defending national champ as they shared race wins on day 1 at Winton, before Jamie won yesterday to stretch his overall lead in the Riders' Championship. To sport of a far different pace, and both Raymond Terrace and Maitland City recorded wins at the weekend in the Premier League Lawn Bowl Series. Windale Gateshead remains the only team yet to register a point this season.
While all the ordinary votes from Saturday's state poll have now been counted, the time-consuming process of counting all the other votes has begun. Most of the absent and pre-poll votes are being counted and scrutinised today and tomorrow, while the counting of postal votes won't be finished until the end of the week. This is how the local swinging seats are looking on tonight's figures, which include the counting of some preferences. Labor's Jodie McKay remains locked in the tightest of battles with independent John Tate for the seat of Newcastle with a margin of less than 400 votes. At Port Stephens, Labor's Jim Arneman has edged ahead of Liberal Craig Bowman. An upset is brewing for Labor in Lake Macquarie with independent Greg Piper ahead of incumbent Jeff Hunter. And the latest figures available for Maitland show Labor's Frank Terenzini ahead of independent Peter Blackmore. Candidates in the region's other electorates hold clear margins, including Kerry Hickey at Cessnock, Robert Coombs at Swansea and George Souris in the Upper Hunter. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Residents could be hit with an 8.92% tax hike mid-year if the state government approves Lake Macquarie City Council's request for the increase on base rates. Council says the money is needed to go towards its asset management program and to develop the city's economic base. And following a community consultation process, it seems the majority of ratepayers don't mind.
More than 50% of our community said yes, we'd be prepared to go with an appropriate rate rise to make sure that you built the parks and looked after our roads.
Businesses can also expect to pay a bit more, with council looking to increase their rates by 9.9%. The hike would raise an extra $5.7 million for council, which still falls short of the $6.1 million needed in the next financial year to cater for cost of living increases.
We are already behind by about $400,000, so we'll be looking for a further $4 to $5 million of cost-cutting efficiencies to meet this program.
Council will formally apply for the increase in June. Madeline Bond, NBN News. Jan and Robert Booth don't want a block of units to be built just 1 metre from their back fence. The complex, which is proposed to be built where these two homes now stand, would be 10 metres high and contain 12 units.
So we have a huge development very, very close to our property, which will see 100% of our open space, our yard.
The Booths and their neighbours have spent the past 6 months fighting the development, and last night it seems their efforts paid off, with Lake Macquarie City Council voting to defer approving the plan until its boundaries are changed.
We're reasonable people. All we're asking is for this developer to recognise that we have rights.
But their fight is far from over. While their property is zoned for residential use, the land over the fence which fronts onto Caves Beach Road is zoned for medium to high density, meaning the apartments should technically be approved.
It is the first of these types of developments in Caves Beach, which is taking up the options for the 2-2 zone land.
The community has gathered at St John's Anglican Church twice recently for outpourings of sadness, and people will fill the church again tonight for a much happier reason, an art show. But only a few years ago, due to flagging attendances, St John's was in danger of closing.
There was a moment 6 years ago where there was a decision, will the church stay open? Will they join up with the cathedral or Merriweather, and will they have a priest? So it was quite desperate.
In almost 150 years, there have never been enough parishioners to warrant a second priest, until now. Stuart Perry has been appointed assistant to Reverend Gary Dodd to help cater for the church's growing flock.
We try and make sure that our services are accessible with good music, good teaching and good atmosphere. Later on in the year, we're going to try and transform our church into a night venue with great acoustic music.
There has been a revival. There's new life and energy and vigour. There's new vision. Things like our art exhibition at the moment is a way to tap into the community.
The number of regular parishioners has quadrupled in the 6 years since Father Gary took over. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
After playing just 3 minutes so far this season, Andrew Johns appears ready to take the plunge once again. With a serious bout of concussion now behind him, he's put his hand up to return.
He's got to do the COG Sport test, but he's trained over the weekend and he trained again this morning, so he's ready.
There's no doubting the effort of teenager Terence Siu in the first 2 rounds. But it's taken a toll on the body, and he'll start Monday night from the bench.
I think he's had a really torrid time, Terence. They've taken it to him big time and he just refuses to back off.
Used to rolling with the punches that comes with playing top-grade football, Riley Brown comes in as the new number 9. It's not the only change to the pack, with Kirk Reynoldson to be rested and Daniel Abraham slotting back in at lock, while some other forwards will be looking over their shoulder at the younger generation on the bench, particularly Matthew White.
He's worked hard in pre-season. We gave him a chance. He's grabbed hold of it pretty well. Bit of talk in the selection room this week about him actually starting.
Meanwhile, Dragons forward Corey Payne will argue for a downgrading to his high tackle charge on James McManus at the NRL judiciary tomorrow night. Less than 24 hours after arriving home from Socceroo duty, both Jade North and Nikki Carl were back to work for their club side. It could be the defender's last week on the job though for Newcastle, as he searches for a start overseas.
There's a contract there for me, just it's if I have to sign it now or, but I said to them I want to, try and go overseas, and they understand that.
It doesn't help that the Socceroos are building towards the Asian Cup in July, and both North and Carl are stuck in an extended off-season, which offers no game time.
If we want to be a part of the next camp, you've got to be playing. And
while North will soon be free to travel, Carl, who remains under contract with Newcastle, is exploring his options.
If you're playing state league, I don't think your chances are that great for the Uruguay-Arja game. I think you need to be playing overseas, and because it's so difficult with the transfer window to go to Europe on loan, it really makes it tough for us boys.
A possibility for the A-League Player of the Year may be playing in Asia on loan. However, he'd require his club's blessing. Meanwhile, the Jets will have 3 players representing Australia's under-23s team tomorrow night in Adelaide. After drawing with Jordan 1-1, the Olyroos need a win against Saudi Arabia to progress to the final stage of qualifying for next year's Olympics. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Once again, the issue of imposing a 1 a.m. curfew on Newcastle's pubs and clubs has been put on the back burner. Last night, Newcastle City councillors voted to defer implementing any kinds of a lockout, deciding instead to allow the city's licensing accord to plead its case against a curfew, much to some councillors' disappointment.
Well, let's say that the record so far of self-enforcement hasn't worked very well. Unless there can be a proper demonstration that that can occur, then I think Council is going to have to act.
I'm disappointed that Council didn't make a decision to support in principle the idea of a 1 a.m. lockdown and a 3 a.m. Closing time.
The Accord says it's currently addressing security and transportation issues and should be able to resolve the CBD's late-night problems within 2 months, negating the need for a curfew. However, the Newcastle Alliance fears these extra measures won't remain in place once the controversy surrounding alcohol-fuelled antisocial behaviour dies down.
The test will be, of course, that they will have to maintain that over the long term. So if in 2 months' time it's a success, that's great, but it's going to have to be maintained, and hopefully it can be done that way.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
It was a case of deja vu for councillors last night, with a controversial rate rise back on the agenda. Despite failing to entice ratepayers with the Gold Coin a Week campaign for the proposed infrastructure levy, last night council agreed to seek state government approval to raise rates above the cap of around 3.5%.
No increase over 10% has been granted, and I think that'll stay the same. So the maximum would be maybe 6% over the rate cap figure, but it could be as low as 5%. It'll be in that range.
The council agreed upon a 25% base rate, with the remainder linked to land values. The exact percentage increase will be decided at the end of April, following a 30-day public consultation process. The Lord Mayor says the rate increase will help to rein in rising infrastructure maintenance costs and responsibilities.
Like Port Stephens Council and Maitland Council did last year, as Lake Macquarie Council is doing this year, Newcastle has taken a decision that we need to have a special variation to address this infrastructure shortfall.
Meanwhile, Councillor Barbara Gaudry's proposal to reopen the Hunter Street Mall has been knocked on the head, with councillors concerned that it would be too costly. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
What should be one of Newcastle's top tourist attractions looks like a bomb has hit it. In fact, it's in far worse shape now due to the vandals and thieves than after it was shelled in World War II by a Japanese submarine. John Howard stood at the fort in June 2002 and promised that the Commonwealth would spend $5.5 million restoring it before handing it over to Newcastle Council to run as a tourist attraction. But the Historical Society fears there'll be nothing left to restore by the time the government gets around to it. And the Lord Mayor says if it isn't up to scratch, the Commonwealth can keep it.
Council won't want to take it over because it's only going to be a burden on the ratepayers, and we know now we've got this infrastructure maintenance problem. Why would we take on something else to do that? But we don't want to miss the opportunity for it to be the wonderful icon it can be.
This is how easy it is for a journalist in broad daylight to enter the fort. So what's stopping the vandals?
It's just a waste. If this was in Sydney, do you think they would let it sit in the centre of town like this and be vandalised?
The Historical Society is asking the government for a full-time security guard to put a stop to the attacks. Paul Lobb, NBN News. Last night, we revealed that the count between John Tate and Labor's Jodie McKay was down to just a few hundred votes based on the preferences counted so far. But today, the Electoral Commissioner said it was so close that the preferences would no longer be revealed until they were all counted next week. That puts the Newcastle count back to 11,085 votes for Jodie and 8,760 for John. Electoral Commission boffins have conceded they expected the race for Newcastle to be between Jodie and Bryce Gaudry, who currently has 7,756 votes. In the Hunters' other swinging seats, Labor's Frank Terenzini is just ahead of Independent Peter Blackmore in Maitland. Labor's Jim Arneman is ahead of Liberal Craig Bowman at Port Stephens. And at Lake Macquarie, Independent Greg Piper has more votes than Labor incumbent Jeff Hunter.
Daniel Toller may still have his own bit of soreness from last Friday night's tackle on Jason Riles, but the Knights forward is all smiles after re-signing with Newcastle for another 2 years.
Pretty excited actually to have your future sorted out for the next couple of years. Takes a load of pressure off you, and yeah, just look forward to playing football.
The Central Charlestown junior admits it would now take a lot to get him away from Energy Australia Stadium, where he made his NRL first-grade debut. New coach Brian Smith figuring in the decision to remain loyal.
He's got a lot of fresh ideas and he's starting to give me more responsibility, and not just me but other players as well. And I like that in him, and I look forward to the next couple of years.
Daniel also enjoys being part of the Knights forward pack with Steve Simpson, Adam Woolnough and Josh Perry, a group of enforcers who are eager to restore Newcastle's once feared reputation.
That tough perception from other clubs, and like the early days in Newcastle with the Butterfields and Sargents and stuff like that, they had that aura about them, and we want to get that back in Newcastle.
And being aged just 24, Daniel Toller is keen to use his next few years at Newcastle to work his way into league's representative ranks. Gary Blair, NBN News. The Upper Hunter is among the top 3 thoroughbred breeding locations in the world. Its 77 stud farms sell several $100 million worth of horses to Australian and international buyers annually, and it's home to well-known sires including Lonhro and Fastnet Rock. But after years of trying to live with the coal industry in their midst, the relationship with the mines has reached breaking point.
We're very, very concerned about where we're going and in regards to the coal mine impacting on our resources, on the environment and on the livelihood of the thoroughbred industry.
The breeder's decision to speak out has support from other agricultural producers, with the future availability of water and the dust that comes from the mine sites heading the list of concerns.
If the mines keep footprinting around the valley, like we're going to be forced to move, because the priority for anybody in horses is the health of the animal.
The state government was briefed last year on the industry's position, and Premier Morris Yemmer is now being told breeders want a moratorium on new mines, a cap on coal exports and a public inquiry
into the impact that the coal mining is having on the industry and from an economic point of view and the sustainability of the other industries.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
People who live at Madawi, east of Raymond Terrace, love the quiet life, but they're making plenty of noise at the moment about a council plan to rezone their land so it can be subdivided in the future to fit in more houses.
We're going to have roads running through our back fences. We're going to have cottage-type houses, 2 and 3 storage, overlooking our backyards.
There's got to be change everywhere, but the way the council are talking about dividing up the blocks, you'd have 6, 7 people living next door, forced on top of you.
But the council says no landowners will be forced to sell or subdivide against their wishes.
And they need to be reassured that there's no resumption of land or enforcement to develop involved in this. It is about planning for opportunity.
Certainly the planners haven't got a clue, because I dare say none of them would have lived around here and had the feeling for this rural type atmosphere.
Meantime, the council's growth plan also includes turning this land just north of Raymond Terrace into a new suburb called Kings Hill.
It's a plan for about 10,000 population, potentially North Raymond Terrace, almost doubles the population of the existing Raymond Terrace township.
Both plans are open for public comment. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
For the 150 residents of Warrabrook Centre for Aged Care, nurse practitioner Claire Abbott is a godsend, providing peace of mind and specialised healthcare whenever they need it.
We don't have a resident doctor, and quite often, well, as you know, emergencies do happen with so many residents, and we've got to have someone that can be called immediately.
With GPs in short supply and not always available, Baptist Community Services introduced a nurse practitioner in 2005 as part of a nationwide pilot program. But the current trial concludes in June and they're eager to see funding extended. Claire Abbott is awaiting her final accreditation while fulfilling the role of nurse practitioner, which is a kind of expert nurse who practices at an advanced level.
They can prescribe medications, they can order diagnostic tests, they can interpret the diagnostic tests, they can formulate a medical diagnosis, they can make limited referrals.
She says the position can make a huge difference when urgent medical attention or diagnosis is required and a GP is not available. The Department of Health and Ageing today said a decision has not yet been made about funding and that the pilot program will be evaluated in coming months. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
There's no mistaking the sheer joy a visit from a pet therapy dog and their owner brings.
It makes me feel very, very happy, because especially Will, because I've only met him 2 times.
Once a week, Delta Society volunteer Louise McLeod, along with her furry friends, do the rounds at the John Hunter Children's Hospital and Hillside Residential Aged Care Facility, bringing some greatly appreciated puppy love to those who need it most.
It's one of the best things I've ever done, particularly when we all know our dogs are special, but it's particularly lovely when you can share them with other people.
Sadly, there are only 4 therapy dogs left in the Hunter Region's program. The Delta Society is now asking anyone with a well-behaved pooch and an hour or 2 to spare each week to join the charity.
The main thing is the dog has a lovely temperament. It's quite calm, it's friendly, it likes people.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
With Olympic qualification on the line, both sides needed a strong start. The Saudis a little too keen, taking each other out in the opening minutes. The first genuine chance fell to the visitors, but it proved to be the start of a tough night for the Saudi strikers. The Olyroos began to control possession. Newcastle jet Mark Bridge off target inside the 6-yard box with Australia's first opportunity. Frustration was getting the better of some players, while captain Mark Milligan marked his return from injury with a card. Rarely troubled by shots on goal, Central Coast mariner Danny Vukovic was eventually rattled by some unconventional attack. After the break, Ruben Zadkovic was brought down on the edge of the box, gifting the Aussies a free kick. Melbourne Victory's Christian Sarkis then provided the perfect ball for Sydney's Nikolai Topor-Stanley, who finally broke the deadlock after 74 minutes. Unlike Jordan 2 weeks earlier, the Saudis struggled to find an equaliser at Hindmarsh Stadium. Then, deep into stoppage time, Adelaide's Nathan Burns combined with Sarkis to complete the Olyroos' much-needed win. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
It's northward bound for Broadmeadow Magic this weekend, using their bye in the final round of the President's Cup to travel to Foster for an exhibition match against a Mid-North Coast representative team. A Port Macquarie side will test the Broadmeadow club's reserve grade. The 10 NBN League clubs are busy blooding new players and tinkering with lineups ahead of a competition that's sure to be one of the closest in years. 2 Newcastle Jets will feature in the Northern New South Wales competition, with Craig Deans and Job Wheelhouse both in desperate need of game time after overcoming long-term injuries. Meanwhile, 8 Novocastrian junior players have been selected for the elite Johnny Warren training camp, with mentors including Graham Arnold and Nick Carl. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News. He easily outclassed his opponents along the Newcastle course, and while it's also scenic, that's certainly where the comparisons with the Port Macquarie circuit end. A cracker field has lined up for Sunday's race, where a 3.8 kilometre swim, 180k cycle and 42.4k run will well and truly separate the winners from the wannabes. After finishing 15th last year, Nathan Stewart is set on going at least a few better this time round.
I'm a lot stronger this year. I'd only been back in the sport 6 months last year when I got my 15th. So, yeah, like I said, I really think I can be up in the top 3 or 4 off the bike if I race well. And just on the run, we really just try to consolidate on that.
It's the bike leg he'll have to make some big moves in if he's to have any chance of keeping up with the likes of world long course champion Craig Alexander and course veteran Jason Shortus. And the 28-year-old will also have to overcome the mental barrier of a long run on an ankle which is still recovering from surgery.
I haven't got as many miles on the run leg as I'd like to. I've just been a bit worried about it, to tell you the truth. But bike and swim though is going really well.
We'll find out how well on Sunday, with racing underway at 6:30am. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
Live shows performed in the Sinatra style are hard to come by these days, but the Ultra Swing Lounge returns to Newcastle tonight for its 4th season. The talented trio of local performers, Daniel Stoddart, David Andrews and Steve Hudson, have invited some guests for their latest show, including sultry Newcastle singer Amy V. Newcastle's Chris Bathgate also joins the cast. The Ultra Swing Lounge runs till Saturday at the Civic Theatre. Meantime, down at Honeysuckle, preparations are in full swing for this weekend's Street Performers Festival, which includes the Bohemian Love Theatre in a circus tent behind the railway workshops. All sorts of creative performers will feature in the festival, which runs all weekend.
It was business as usual at Gamers Motor Auctions this morning, despite last night's incident.
We're fortunate that it only happened, the greatest disturbance was in one of the buildings, and we're able to conduct the auction here today without any disturbance.
Around 11:15, a police car patrolling the area noticed the smashed doors at the front of the auction house and went to investigate. A vehicle then left the premises at high speed, leading police on a pursuit through suburban streets. The vehicle was eventually recovered after it was abandoned following a collision. At this stage, police don't know how many people were involved and are yet to make any arrests. In all, police were involved in 4 pursuits across Newcastle overnight, but they're yet to determine whether all the vehicles had been stolen from gamers.
We've only located 2 of the vehicles at this stage of the game and they're fairly damaged. Forensics are looking at those at the moment, so until we find the other 2, we won't know the full extent of our damage.
Mr. Gamer says this is the first time his business had been targeted in an organised attack, and he'll now look to beef up security at the Newcastle West premises. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
It's prime waterfront property owned by Lake Macquarie City Council, but rather than leasing, redeveloping or selling this $1 million site, it's falling into disrepair and squatters have made it their home.
And I've been pushing council staff for some time to make a call, do we restore it or do we demolish it? We certainly can't leave it as it is, it's adding no value. In fact, it's probably costing council and creating a haven for vandals and drug abuse.
Councillor Ken Paxonos says other blocks of land like this one have been sitting dormant for decades. He's been calling for a copy of the council's property portfolio in the hope of increasing revenue streams.
But once that list is made available, I think in conjunction with some consultants or experts, we'll be able to soon determine whether there's opportunity there for council to actually start to be more entrepreneurial with how they manage their real estate.
Ultimately, that could help the council's bottom line and alleviate some of the need to raise rates. In response, council says it owns properties for community benefit while others generate income. But the council is evaluating assets over the next 12 months and will discuss options for properties which could be sold. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Apart from the digital cameras, today could easily have been 1857. The loco backed into Newcastle Station, the enginemen were treated like celebrities, the glass and brass were polished, and a platform packed with people watched the Governor of the day unveil a plaque marking the first rail trip from Newcastle to Maitland. The reenactment was organised by Engineers Australia to recognise the historic journey that suddenly made the Lower Hunter a smaller place. As the 35-class loco pulled away, the smell of soot and the sound of steam rekindled memories.
I think it's very exciting.
Well, I'd have liked to have been up the front to relive my old days as a fireman on the 35 classes.
But it's just marvellous how far we've come, really, in 150 years.
A great achievement at the time was laying the line across the Hexham swamps on a bed of chopped-down tea trees.
There's nothing to hold the ballast up. It was propped up there and it still exists today.
Though she may have been overtaken by a coal train, there was no rush for the loco nicknamed Nanny. Her job today was to carry her jovial passengers to Maitland to appreciate a chapter in our industrial and social history. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
It's hard to imagine this part of the world needs another reason to attract attention. But with the Great North Road one of 4 sites nominated for World Heritage listing, the Cedar Creek Vineyard came up with the idea of lining the road with these colourful creations. The local community has definitely warmed to the idea, especially the younger generation. Laguna Public School in the Wattigan Valley may be small on numbers, but it's big on creativity.
Even the littlies, they've had ideas of how we can go about putting the arms and legs on. It has been quite interesting, especially some of the weird shapes that we've come up with.
The first one we did was that one, and we all got into groups and made them, and then the teachers came down and hammered them into the ground.
The kids even giving the shirts off their back for the project.
Any of the clothes yours? Have you grown out of any of your clothes?
Yes, a few of the clothes are mine, and school bags and stuff.
As well as drawing attention, the scarecrows have kept the students safe from crows and cars.
With motorists coming around the corner, they've slowed down, thinking that our children are crossing the road, so it's worked very well as a safety deterrent.
It's also provided other benefits for the students.
Was it a good distraction from being in class?
Yeah, really good.
Out of almost 70 scarecrows, only one isn't doing his job. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
It was a bit like letting the kids run the candy store, but it's Monday night these nights are in for a real treat. Back in full training midweek, John's passed the all-important medical test today that proves he's over the concussion suffered in the first game and he'll play Monday night.
I can't wait. It's a dream come true, really. Like, everyone wants to play with Joey, and finally it's going to happen.
Oh, mate, it's going to be awesome when Joey comes back. It's going to be an unbelievable dream come true playing with Joey. John's one of the world's best players, and hopefully the same can come back when Danny comes back too.
In Canberra, former Knight Dane Tilse lines up for his first top-grade match against his old club since he was sacked from Newcastle at the start of 2005.
Yeah, there is a fair bit in it, and I want to do well considering the circumstances, but I just need to make sure I keep my emotions in check.
Still good mates with several of the Knights players he'll square off against on Monday night. Tilse knows friendship won't extend past the sideline.
Oh, I probably believe it, I'm looking to give it as good as I get, so that's just the way it is.
Newcastle will head to Canberra on Sunday.
It's just been a real journey. We didn't start these cars until November. In the last 3 months, guys have done a massive amount of work to even get the cars here in the first place.
They've got a weakness, it's struggling to chase down a target, so I'd like to win the toss and certainly put a bit of pressure on them.
Being a senior bloke myself, I don't really look on it too much. We've just got to go and play good cricket tomorrow and the best side wins really. So.
Take a look at what's tipped to be the next $1 million baby bred from the Hunter Valley. A colt side by the famous Rock of Gibraltar will be the headline act of the 50 Coolmore stud yearlings that are heading to Sydney this weekend, ready for the post-Easter sales.
So he's got a vast international appeal, and we have high hopes that he'll be in the sort of top 1 or 2 yearlings sold.
That will mean a price tag well into the $3 million range. But he's not the only one that should draw 7-figure sums to the sale price.
Already the sales this year on average around the world and in Australia have gone up about 20%, so we're hoping the same increase.
Given the bids that were knocked down at the same sales last year, any increase like that would smash the records.
Anybody with horses say it's the best group you ever had, but genuinely and firmly believe this is the best group of yearlings we've ever taken to any sale anywhere.
The Coolmore boss has cast his eye to neighbouring studs as well and rates the quality of all the Hunter Valley bred stock as better than last year, with buyers keen on anything by either Redute's Choice or in Costa del Lago. However, there's plenty to ponder, with Woodlands boasting the progeny of sires such as Lonhro and Commands, which are sure to be well sought after at the sales, which start on April 10. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
This is something you might see more often at Blackbutt in the near future. As Newcastle Council considers a range of fees at the reserve, it seems most visitors would be willing to part with a gold coin to see the native wildlife.
A small cost, it would be great. And if we needed, we would come more often. If once a month didn't do it, we'd come more often to see it stay open.
Yep, that would be fine. Yeah, everything else is free here, so yep, don't have a problem with that.
Removing the animals has been mentioned by Council as a cost-cutting measure to help pay for infrastructure maintenance. Today, Mayor John Tate couldn't guarantee every creature is here to stay, but he did acknowledge their importance.
We've now got good modern facilities for the animals, and you wouldn't want to waste that.
With the reserve's popularity on show, a new $15,000 facility was unveiled, made possible by donations from the family of Rod Earp, Blackbutt Volunteers and West Leagues Club.
We currently only have one shelter and one double electric barbecue in this site, so as I said, we identified the need to serve the community by providing another.
A kiosk is also being considered as a way of raising revenue.
That's all in the melting pot. We need to look at that and be positive about it. I'm optimistic that Blackbutt will continue to progress, but we need to also look at how we do that financially.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
There's few places tougher to play than Toronto, and Macquarie began like it was going to be another walk in the park at home. The Terraces' defence was exposed on the edges as the Scorpions stung for a second time to take a 12-point lead. But the Magpies dug deep, and Peter Ellis's effort typified their comeback, going on to score an important 20 points to 16 away win. Day one of the Newcastle District Cricket Grand Final at the No. 1 Sports Ground, but it was to be a long one for Wallsend. Dave Sellup, the first of Michael Hogan's 5 wickets. They followed in quick succession as Wallsend fell for just 132. Merriweather was keen to get on with it in the run chase. But Gary Geese gave the Tigers some hope with his first ball.
Years of fighting to get these buildings transferred into public ownership has come to nothing, with the state government now calling for tenders to develop the historic site. Newcastle City Council, along with many residents, are now fearful of what will happen to the heritage-listed Wallsend Post Office, police station and courthouse.
It really is under threat if the state government are prepared to sell it. And I wouldn't like to see that happen. I think it should be there for the community of Wallsend to appreciate.
We are disappointed, but in the end I think if we can get someone that will look after the actual site itself, not only the historical value but even use it for commercial use, it will be better looked after that way.
Since police and court staff vacated the site, it's become an eyesore and allowed to fall into disrepair.
It has just been run down and left by the government.
The Lord Mayor believes the disused Mayfield Police Station could be next on the government's sale list.
It's a wonderful building as well. It's got very strong heritage features, and those sorts of things are part of the community and they need to be retained.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
You know, it's been a while since I played up in the first grade, you know, way back Cowboys last year up in Townsville. But yeah, like I said before, you know, I'm just trying to focus on what I need to do.
On an afternoon that was just right for football, Scott O'Neill liked what he saw slicing through to open up the scoring. The gaps in defence by no means limited to just one side, with the smallest man on the field, Shane Ryan, finding the biggest hole. Carving up, the Butcher Boys put 3 past the lines in quick time as Steve Cook finished off the good lead-up work to earn himself a double and Central a 16-6 lead. Souths needed something to go their way, and Tom Freeman provided with an opportunistic try against the run of play. It wasn't all about attack, as both sides launched into each other after the break. But Central Charlestown will have to do something about its second half slumps, with Souths running away with it, the second time Central has let lead slip in as many weeks. Merewether began day 2 requiring just 46 runs to win with 6 wickets in hand, but a combination of rain and wickets wrecked their morning. That took Gary Geese's wicket tally to 5. He could have had 6 had this chance been held on the last ball of the morning session. It still ended up in a run-out though, which put Merewether's Michael Hogan really off his lunch. When they returned, Merewether's equation was 13 runs with a wicket in hand. But Wallsend's Matt Baker made it a simple subtraction, as the Lions tumbled all out for just 119. They pushed for an outright win, but Wallsend held firm before stumps were eventually pulled to be named premiers.